So Crossroads is closed, other churches are open. Why? How do you slice this thing of what's faithfulness and what's foolishness? And people do it different ways. You might have heard of people claiming right now that you can remain, if you're a Christian, you can keep going out, you can keep in contact with people because God will protect you physically from this virus, that's what faith is. Now look, I'm not here to say who's right or who's wrong. I just want to offer my opinion on the subject, which is faithfulness doesn't have to mean you're going out and acting as if God will protect you from physical disease. I just look at history. Does the Bible clearly say that God will protect Christians from sickness and disease? The answer is, I think, no. See, as much as I might want God to be about my physical body salvation and protection, He's actually far more interested in what happens in my soul. It turns out He's interested in spiritual salvation. Did you know that every single Christian who's ever lived in the past has died? Think about this with me for a second. We love to talk about the miracles of Jesus, these physical healings of Jesus. I would actually argue those aren't the most substantial example of His power. Because think about it. For instance, His friend Lazarus, His biggest, most impressive miracle, His friend Lazarus dies. He's in a tomb for 4 days. He's like stinky, disgusting dead. And Jesus shows up in a town and He does this amazing thing where He raises him from the dead. It says that Lazarus actually walks out of the tomb covered in grave cloths and has to untangle himself to start to talk to him. That's how dead he was. Amazing, right? Well, here's the truth. Lazarus at that time, a friend of Jesus, probably about the same age of Jesus, which means that Lazarus would have been about 30 years old, right? Do you know how long people lived in the first century at that time? Not much longer than 30 years old. It turns out that within 10 to 20 years, according to statistics, Lazarus likely died again. And so even the most impressive physical miracle that Jesus ever pulled off wasn't so much a resurrection, a salvation of somebody, a guarantee that they would be protected from sickness forever. It was a momentary physical resuscitation for somebody who eventually died again physically. See, God is far more concerned about your spiritual salvation than He is your physical salvation, which is why, for me, I can look at something like this current crisis and say, I don't think it's faith to say that I can walk out and get sick. Now, to be clear, if God calls me, no matter what danger stands in my path, if God calls me somewhere to somebody, I go anyway, despite the consequences. But what I embrace is the reality of those consequences. Like so many Christians who've gone before us, people like the Apostle Paul, who God called to various cities, and he went knowing that they would hate him, that they would stone him, that he would get beaten, and he did. God didn't spare him from that stuff. God called him through it anyway. And so maybe God does call us through these things. I'm just telling you, let's not pretend or imagine that we get this get out of the pandemic free card as Christians. It'd be amazing if it was true. It'd be incredible. I'm not saying that God can't protect us from it. I'm not saying that God won't protect us from it. I'm just saying that's not the general course of history. God's far more concerned about our spiritual salvation than our physical salvation.